Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. Coming at you with some Spright, because you know it wouldn't be me if I played a season and didn't play at least a little bit of Spright. We're going to start with the going first game against Purrely, because I feel like this will demonstrate pretty well comboing turn 1 with Spright. It'll also demonstrate playing through Fulos more, I guess, to the point, playing through our own Duel and Lockbird. So, Duel and Lockbird is actually one of the main reasons why I think Spright is actually a really good deck in the current meta. And it's not just that. It's Duel and Lockbird as well as Impulse. So this is going to be more of a pure Spright build. Deck list, as always, is going to be at the end of the video. But by not including other engines like Millennium or Fiendsmith, we're able to play Impulse, which is a very strong hand trap right now. And the other notable thing about not playing other engines is that we can play through Duel and Lockbird very, very easily. See, when it comes to Spright, the only things that you really search off of in this deck are blue and jet, right? So Duel and Lockbird is really only going to hamper those searches. Sometimes that does end up being important, but more often than not, you can play through DROLL very easily, including your own Duel and Lockbird, as I am doing here. That makes it not only, of course, an excellent tool against decks like Mitsurugi and Ryzeal, but you can also use it against Maxis and Fualoses as well. Here I decided to, as soon as my opponent activated the My Friend, of course, revive the Carrot. But then I thought, you know, I might want to use Carrot to negate one of the quick play spells, so I'm actually going to use IP, and I'll just use SP to get rid of my opponent's My Friend Purrely right now. Plus, then we don't have to worry about them recovering quick play spells if I remove one of their monsters later, although given how set up we are here, there's probably not going to be a later. Didn't negate the Purrely because it doesn't have a guaranteed hit to, find something, and sure enough, they revealed 3 hand traps there. They go to activate the effect. I'm going to use Little Knight to tag out. That way they can't go into one of their Purrely Xyz monsters. I'm going to let the quick play spell resolve here because I can just use Imperm on the Purrely. This will stop both the search and the ability to use its effect to go into an Xyz monster. So we're looking pretty good here. They're going to link it off, but then, I don't know, as soon as they realized, I guess, that their Anima didn't have a target, or maybe that I still had my red and carrot negates, they're just going to concede and give me the win there. Yeah, I felt pretty good about that, even though my opponent still had 2 cards in hand, because, again, we hadn't used the red or carrot negates. So just an example of what a typical turn 1 with Spright looks like, not just in terms of like the board that you're putting out, but also again using your own Duel and Lockbird very offensively on turn 1 when your opponent activates Maxi or Fualos, because in, I would say, literally 9 out of 10 Spright hands, you can just full combo and end on the exact same board anyway. It's very, very good. So let's go and take a look at some more gameplay here though. 1 and 2, of course, includes some going second gameplay as well, so naturally we are going to be going up against Maliss here and going second for this one. Alright, now I can't remember if... Okay, I did open Lancia in this one, yeah. So, Lancia I've been including in a lot of my decks moving forward because it plays very well against, of course, Maliss as well as Orcus, which Orcus is getting more and more popular by the day. So here my opponent's going to lead with normal summon Max to go into Almirage, activate the backup Ignister, which they will then use to add the Dormouse from deck to hand and then discard it. This will let them go into Splash Mage or the Wizard Ignister, which they already opened as well. So I'm going to use the Lancia against the Dormouse effect here and see how they respond. It turns out they have a Called by the Grave. Now, Call by wouldn't have stopped in Nibiru, but I thought it might have been a Cross-Out Designator. Of course, it's always a possibility, so here, it seems kind of weird, but I'm actually going to use Lancia to sort of test for responses against the Maliss opponent here. Now, they're going to summon a Chessy Cat, and I will say, I was a little bit scared that they were going to go for the White Rabbit, although to be fair, even if they had White Rabbit, summon that here instead, I could have just Nibiru'd anyway, and yeah, they would have had like a GWC or MTP or whatever trap card they searched here to activate on my turn, but that still wouldn't have been, you know, much of anything, right? But here they went for Chessy Cat. I'm guessing the last card in their hand might have been the White Rabbit, actually, given that that's the case, but we can just fire off the Nibiru here and leave them with only a token. They do get to use the Wizard Ignister effect, but that's just going to change my Nib to defense mode. Their last card is actually a set card, so I'm guessing that's the trap card they were going to banish, or it might be Maliss in the Mirror. Actually, that seems like it could be pretty likely as well. But yeah, as soon as I started doing Spright stuff, they just conceded. like I said, even if it was GWC or MTP, those don't really do anything here. Like MTP, they could add March Hare and then March Hare banish, you know, Dormouse or a Chesty Cat to summon both. But again, that just puts up 2 bodies in defense mode, which I can play through very easily. And even if I somehow don't OTK through it, you know, they're still going to be left with literally absolutely nothing going into my full combo board. So yeah, it's just a pretty simple sequence of using our hand traps in order to stop the Maliss player's turn 1. Let's go ahead and look at a much more back and forth game. All right, here's a duel against White Forest Centur-Ion. Classic. Love both those archetypes, and it's a very good deck when played together. This duel's gonna be 14 turns. 14, it's the longest one I've had in quite some time. And you might, from my opening hand, kind of see why it ends up being that long. Don't really open any starters here, but that's actually kind of fine because my opponent just shotgunned the maxi anyway. And we love to see our opponents wasting their maxis, although to be fair, I had both Ash Blossom and DROLL, so I could have played through a lot there. Now, they're going to go normal summon Centurion Primera. I'm going to use Imperm on it. I decided to use Imperm early to not only stop the search, but also set up a trap card in my graveyard for the Impulse. That's why I didn't use Ash Blossom there, for example. So here, though, I am going to set one of my Ash Blossoms, as it's starting to look like I'm not going to, you know, find plays very easily. And if I can get any monster plus any level 2 monster, then I can at least have something. Fortunately, it doesn't look like my opponent has plays here either. Still no level 2 monster, but what I can do is actually tribute summon the Ash Blossom for my Lancia. They're going to chain Phalanx. I'm going to use Impulse to negate that. This whole sequence probably looks pretty weird, as I'm now starting to use all my hand traps against my opponent's like very non-board. You might be thinking to yourself, well Lex, wouldn't you want to save all this stuff in case your opponent has plays? But there's 2 reasons why I'm not super concerned about that. 1, my opponent just battled into Ash Blossom and then passed last turn. They clearly don't have much going on. They're also in top deck mode. 2, if they're in top deck mode, I still do have a couple of hand traps, plus Crossout in case it's up being Imperm or a Call By for their stuff as well. So, recognizing the game state that we're in, where both my opponent and I are in top deck mode and neither of us really have plays, I realize that we're in a battle of inches here, where I think it's more fine to use these powerful cards on seemingly insignificant things to ensure that I'm the one who ends up with the top deck before my opponent does. Obviously, I can't control either of our top decks, but I can set myself up for a situation where we are going into that, better, more advantageously than our opponent. They're also trying to do the same. That's why they used Phalanx here. They're trying to banish their Primera and then special it later to then full combo. That's why I'm going to use Impulse on it to stop them from doing that. And then now I can use my Lancia to battle over their Centurion Primera. Now, if they top deck, a random level 4 monster or whatever, they have fewer things to work with here. Gonna set Crossout and pass. They're going to go for the Synchro Rumble to revive the Primera. Potentially try to get their plays off again. I'm going to use the Ash Blossom against the Primera. Their face down card does end up being Called By, which makes me very glad I set Crossout, as I'm now going to use that against the Called By. Again, this duel has come to a stage where it is a battle of inches. If either of us can get even the slightest advantage over the other, that person is going to just walk away with the game. So I need to do everything I can to make sure that person is me. Draw for turn. Here's Spright Starter. Going to use it in the draw phase to hopefully try to play around DROLL at least a little bit. I know I said DROLL didn't matter, but might as well play around it if you can, right? But one of their 3 cards in hand is Ash Blossom. Not the most surprising, given that they haven't, really been playing any of their cards in hand, but... Alright, now here I'm going to do something a little bit interesting. I'm going to normal summon this DROLL and Mockbird and link it off, because I really don't think it's going to be that useful against Centur-Ion. Then I'm going to go for an SP Little Knight after linking the DROLL into Almirage. It lets me banish from my opponent's graveyard, and I'm going to take out their Centurion Phalanx. That way, even if they end up having plays on a follow-up turn, they don't have, that to help support them. The other reason I made Little Knight here, as well as acting as disruption on the opponent's turn, is also because it's a link to. Now, it doesn't matter what monster I top deck. If I can just get any monster, I can link them into Sprint or potentially Elf, and then maybe try to go into some plays here. They end up setting a monster before passing back over to me. Drawing for turn, we find a monster, but it's Lancia, so we can't normal summon it. And a face down card ends up being Centurion Trudea. I get why they said it. If they try to normal summon and activate, I can simply chain the Little Knight effect, and then during my next turn battle over it. They're gonna send to special the Gargoyle and then use that to battle over my Little Knight. So now I'm in a pretty bad spot here. Draw for turn, find the Angler, but I'm not going to summon it. I'm going to keep it in hand. If I top deck Swap Frog, I can send it to get more bodies. Or if I top deck any Spright monster, I could normal Angler and then special the Spright monster. Sure enough, we finally find a Spright monster. We're going to special summon the Carrot, and we're going to link these two off, and I decided to go for the Spring here. It's very risky, and in hindsight, this was actually a huge misplay. I really should have anticipated that my opponent had another Ash Blossom in hand, and if I wanted to play around it while still advancing my board state, I really should have made Elf instead, Elf Revive Angler, then overlay them for Gigantic, detach the Angler. That would have gotten Ash Blossomed, but I would have still had a 3200 Gigantic that could have battled over the Gargoyle here. Instead, I got a little greedy and went for Sprint to try to get more bodies, and yeah, I don't know. I really should have assumed they had an Ash Blossom specifically, again, given that my opponent really was not making plays at all. But now they found a Stellar of the White Forest, and that's going to be it. They can just full combo from here, so I'm just going to concede and give it to them. But I had to show this game, not only because it was 14 turns long, but because it was a rather unique game state where I feel like I really did have to play differently in order to be able to try to get ahead. Also worth noting, even if I had the 3200 Gigantic, my opponent would have full comboed anyway, and it really wouldn't have mattered. But it was still a misplay on my part, and I did still want to note that. So anyway, I got one more duel to show you before the deck list here. Let's go to that last one. All right, this last game is going to be up against Sky Striker Tenpai. So naturally, I'm going to be going first. I don't remember if I won or lost the coin flip, though. Let's see. I won the coin flip. Okay, so I didn't really have any inclination that my opponent was going to be on a Tenpai deck. Now, here I open Nimble Beaver plus Nimble Angler, which is a little bit awkward. You can still full combo, but the reason it tends to be a little awkward is because you won't have an extra copy to send of Angler to send with Sprint. So I'm going to make Gigantic, summon out Swap Frog, ban the Ronin, then add Swap Frog back to hand, pitch the Angler to summon Swap Frog, and now I can get those level 2 bodies off of the Angler. This does, however, mean I won't get to access any of my Spright main deck monsters, because I don't have Starter, and I can't use Gigantic to summon blue anymore. However, I think it's worth it here. Like, yeah, I won't end on red or carrot, but you get more bodies this way, and it's also more deck thinning. Plus, I've got DROLL plus Ash Blossom plus Impulse in hand, so I'm really not that worried about not having access to red or carrot. If I had fewer hand traps in hand, then I think I might have been more inclined to summon the blue off the Gigantic to search up, you know, my Spright bodies, but here, yeah, I'm not really too concerned about it. We're going to end on both IP and SP because I'm also playing Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. I can still use IP to make that while keeping up SP as a disruption as well. Setting Impulse before passing over to my opponent. They're going to lead with Ultimate Slayer, sending the Ferrigite in order to get rid of my Spright Elf, which is fine with me, not that big of a deal. Ferrigite F lets them draw and then put back, and I'm going to use this opportunity to fire off my Droll and Lockbird. They're going to chain Called by the Grave, and that's going to stop my Droll from stopping them, but I still have Ash and Impulse, so I'm really not that concerned here. They're going to go for a Lightning Storm, destroying all attack position monsters. I'm going to chain IP to try to go into an Underworld Goddess, but they're going to chain Widow Anchor to negate. We're going to try to use SP to bounce out herself and the IP, but they're going to use Droplet, sending their 2 spell cards on the field to negate my monsters. So this is going to eat my board except for the Ronin, and while that's a little bit scary, my opponent only has 1 card left, and I still have Impulse and Ash Blossom, so 2 hand traps for 1 card makes me feel not quite as concerned. I'm actually going to set that last card before passing back over to me. Drawing for a turn, we find Spright Red. I'm going to special summon and then link it off with the Ronin and go for the Spright Elf. Going to go Elf F on the Ronin. They're going to chain Widow Anchor on the Elf, which is fine by me because now I know they're going to be in top deck mode, and during my next turn, or rather their next turn, I can simply, during the main phase, Elf Revive Red to have a negate on top of the Ash Blossom and Impulse I already have. And here they finally show off that they're a Tenpai deck. There's the Genroku. I'm going to use Impulse on the Genroku to negate that, and Now, they no longer have any cards in hand or field, and then Elf revives the red, ensuring further negates and plays, and they decide to, of course, just concede here. Alright, so here is the deck list, and as you can see, as mentioned before, it's just going to be a pure Spright deck. And we've got Drolls and Impulses out in spades here. Apologies for background noises, by the way. So yeah, like I mentioned before, we're on a pure build, no Millennium or Fiendsmith, so that we can play Impulse. I think that the ability to use Impulse is really, really good in this meta. This is a very, very good hand trap. And this is actually one of those instances where I think it's actually potentially more worth it than playing like Fiendsmith. I discussed when talking about Orcus about how, you know, if you want to play Fiendsmith versus Mitsurugi, it does kind of come down to, do you want to have access to Impulse to play around Droll better? However, for this deck, we already play around Droll extremely well, so we don't have to make that decision. And in that regard, I think that it does end up being more worth it to play Impulse than it is to play Fiendsmith, although it's close. I do still think it's really close. As mentioned before, we're rocking that playset of Droll and Lockbird, not only because it's really good against the meta, but because we can also use it against the Maxi as well as Fuelos. Fuelos I really should be including in this deck. I'm kind of surprised I didn't put in any copies, although I do really like having the Imperm to help with the Impulse here. But I think in the future I might cut one Imperm and one Triple Tack here in order to play a couple copies of Fuelos, because it is a really, really good card. You could also consider cutting some amount of Lancias to make room for Fuelos in a build like this, but Lancia, as mentioned before, is so good not only against Maliss, but also Orcus right now, which is getting more and more popular by the day, it seems. So I really like having the Lancia, even if it's not always good against stuff like Mitsurugi and Raziel. For the extra deck here, there is a lot of space, so stuff like Downard and Typhone really don't end up coming up that much, although I still think they're really solid options. So if you're looking to play more rank or link 2s, you could cut those very easily. Also, I'll be honest, Zeus really does not come up that much, and is, I think, very optional in this deck. So is Oni Bimaru Soul Sweeper, although of the kind of random rank or link 2s you could play, I really like this one. It's a very, very nice removal option to have. Even in grindier games, you could banish an opponent's monster, battle directly, go into Downard, and then Zeus, on top of also just clearing the way for OTKs, and or comboing. It's just a really solid card, even if it doesn't come up a lot. Love Jinbuster. Jinbuster is great to make mid-combo in Spright. We didn't do it in this video, but in a lot of other Spright videos I've made, I have done that, where you can use blue plus jet to make the Jinbuster before going into something like Sprind. That not only insulates you against hand traps, but also this can just serve as an end board piece as a monster negate as well. So yeah, other than some minor non-engine adjustments, I really think if you're going to go for a pure Spright build, this is definitely the way to do it. Again, there is the argument to other variants like Fiendsmith or Millennium, which has its merit again, but I really, really, really like Impulse. Okay, so I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to mention about Spright here. I have some variants in mind that I might try out, but that'll be for another day. So thanks as always for watching, and for the time being, let's just move on to the outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.